When I was in rabbinical school, about 20 blocks up from here at the Jewish Theological Seminary, I served one summer as a chaplain intern in a hospital called Beth Israel North, a small hospital that doesn't exist anymore. And I was part of an interfaith group of students who would visit patients and sit with them and listen and pray with them in whatever form or language that comforted them. I sat with many patients that summer, and I remember all the suffering I saw. I remember coming home and many nights just weeping for the suffering. Some of the patients, or many of the patients, I've forgotten, and some I still remember, but there's one patient I will never forget. Someone I will call Sabrina for reasons of confidentiality, a shining, soulful, young African-American woman, about 17 or 18 years old. She was in the hospital because she was suffering from sickle cell anemia, a genetic disease that affects 1 in every 12 African Americans. I don't know if she survived or not, but I do know from reading over the years that racism has slowed research on that particular genetic disease and also impacted patients who suffer from it. This sermon is dedicated to her wherever she is. Sickle cell anemia, if you don't know, is a disease where some red blood cells are shaped like sickles or crescent moons. These sickle cells become rigid and sticky, which slows or blocks blood flow. But here's the way Sabrina explained her disease to me, and this is what remains etched in my mind. I walked into her room one day, and she showed me this wound on her leg with no shame and no embarrassment, and I had no sense of, oh, that's disgusting. I just looked. And she showed me the two sides of the wound, and she said, this skin is not growing back together. Like the sides of the wound are not knitting back together. In other words, normally, when you get a cut or worse, a gash, or even a deep puncture that needs stitches, somehow a protective layer of skin comes together over time to cover the wound. It's basic, it's fundamental, and crucial for survival. I often think about this image on a metaphorical level too. All kinds of wounds in this world, fights between people where sides can't come together, family conflict where members don't speak to each other, war creating endless bloodshed between opposing sides. And even within us, sometimes it feels like there are parts of us that can never come together, that instead of standing unified and coherent, we feel fragmented, split. Internally, sides refusing to knit together. I believe we all seek the kind of healing that Sabrina sought. We seek it on a bodily level, a psychic and spiritual level, a familial level, even on a cultural and international level. We want the sides to come together to form a healthy and healed whole. So here we are in Parshat Truma. The portion of the week is all about building a mishkan, building a sanctuary for God. God makes God's needs known very clearly by saying, "V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham." Make me a sanctuary, a mikdash, and I will dwell amongst you, or amongst them. This mishkan actually informs the rest of the book of Exodus, the remaining 5 parshiot portions. So in this one, in Truma, and the next one, Tetzaveh, are all the very specific instructions for building that mishkan. And it involves beautiful materials and cherubs and, just all kinds of details that show you how abundant and beautiful this place for God's dwelling, for God's presence will be. And the last two parshiot, Vayakel and Pekudei, are all about the actual building. The Israelites hear Moshe, hear the instructions, and actually build a mikdash for God. And there's one parsha between the instructions for building and the building, between the ideal and the reality, and that's Ki Tisa. And in that parsha is a story of betrayal and treachery and idol worship. A split between God and God's people. The worship of the golden calf. It's a moment of loss of faith. One could say it's the lowest moment in this entire book, maybe in the entire Torah. When the Israelites, in a moment of anxiety, not knowing when their leader Moshe will come back, decide to create and worship a golden calf. They're desperate for a fix in their state of abandonment. Worshipping a calf is the deep rupture in the book of Exodus, a betrayal of God, a wounding that almost brings down the entire enterprise. God's furious and tells Moshe he wants to scrap the whole project and start again with him. But Moshe says no. And when Moshe sees the dancing and the idol worship, he himself takes the tablets of the law that he just received on top of Mount Sinai, throws them and shatters them. Thousands of Israelites die in punishment for their betrayal. But there is repair. There is a knitting of two sides, God and Israel coming back together. And there's repair because we have an amazing leader, Moshe, who insists that God not give up God's project. Basically saying to God, you promised. Zechor le'Avraham, le'Yitzchak, le'Yisrael, avadecha asher nishbata lehem bach. Recall Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yisrael, your servants, to whom you yourself swore when you spoke to them, I will make your seed many as the stars of the heavens, and all of this land which I have promised, I will give to your seed that they may inherit it for the ages. V'nachalu le'olam. Moshe stands and insists on the continuity of God's relationship with God's people, saying, Im ein panav holchim al ta'alenu mizeh. If your presence, or literally your face, doesn't go, then don't even take us up from here. Forget the whole thing. You have to stay in relationship. Moshe succeeds, bringing the two sides back together, healing a rupture, paving the way for the actual creation of the Mikdash, the Mishkan, the sanctuary, for God's home among the Israelites to be built. Since October 7th, I've been in grief with many of you. But not only grief for what our brothers and sisters have experienced in Israel and continue to suffer, I'm also feeling grief for the American Jewish community, feeling that the communal mikdash, our sanctuary, is existentially threatened. I know that people of every political stripe and standing feel alone and lonely. I know this because so many of you have reached out to me, congregants, friends, family. Some are estranged from their children or from their parents who have turned rightward or leftward. Some are lonely in this community because of their political convictions. Some are lonely in standing with the hostages, or for calling for a ceasefire, or for continued war in Gaza. Wherever we each are, the larger American Jewish community has been fractured, has been split, I believe, because of a lack of a desire to understand the other, a lack of curiosity about those that stand on another side, a lack of willingness to be in continued relationship with other members of our larger community whose views threaten us. Having heard people from all over the political map explain their convictions, I believe that each person in the larger American Jewish community has their own reasons to stand where they are standing. Maybe they are protecting the survival of Israel and the ongoing survival of our people. Maybe they are fighting anti-Semitism. Maybe they are standing for an oppressed people. Maybe they are fighting for innocent civilians, families, and children who have no protection and whose homes have been destroyed. And maybe they are motivated by all or some of these, or parts of several of them. Whatever it is, each person has values undergirding their own standing. What I'm asking for tonight is what Moshe asked from God: stay in relationship. This people has a long history. The Ark of the Covenant is long. You might feel enraged or threatened by someone on another side, but the history of the Jews is bigger than this moment. I'm asking for the kind of curiosity that comes from respect, saying, oh, there must be a reason why you are having the experience you're having. Let me try to understand this, even though I think you are dead wrong on this one. Here's a beautiful example of one of our of an email a community member shared with me that brought me to tears. A message they sent to another member who has family in Israel and lost a beloved family member in the war. They write, I can sympathize and even empathize, but I will not pretend to know what you are going through at this moment. What I can do is say, I will be here for you, however I can be. I remember right after the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, the feelings I had being half black and seeing those people who easily could have been my cousins, aunts, uncles, and father being killed. And the feelings were different than those who did not have the same connection, who were not black. I cannot imagine what you and your family are continuing to go through. There's no one I know who has not felt pain this week. But I want to acknowledge that my pain is not your pain. Mine is not as layered and complex. In this moment, I want to not just be in this with you, but for you. And I will in any way I can be. This person strived to imagine another's experience, even though they could not possibly understand what they were going through, and they had the humility to acknowledge the limits of their own understanding. I know it's hard. I know it's hard to imagine another side when one feels threatened by their positions, when you feel they might be taking us down the wrong ethical path, or even a path of destruction. And I want to be clear, I'm not asking anyone here to give up their convictions. I'm not asking you to stop fighting for what you believe in, to stop going to rallies, writing your congressperson, doing whatever you are doing to fight what should be fought at this moment, to realize the world that you want to bring into being. What I'm asking for is more subtle than that. It's tricky and it's difficult. I'm asking you to stay in relationship to the whole Jewish people, even when not agreeing with them, by maintaining respect and curiosity, by having moral imagination. Hold your convictions and fight for them, and you try to understand the person who you think is on the other side. And do that for the sake of this holy sanctuary, for this mikdash, for the covenant that knits us all together. That is my ask tonight, to look at your neighbor and wonder, why are they standing where they do? Is it possible to have compassion for them, even if that position threatens what I care most about? And maybe it's not possible. I don't know. But I think it's worth trying. Is it possible to have curiosity, to listen with an open mind and heart, to give someone the benefit of the doubt? May we all be blessed to strengthen our community, to have compassion for our brothers and sisters. May we each contribute to building a much-needed mishkan, a mikdash, for our times and for future generations.